So I hope everyone can see my screen. Can someone confirm if they are able to?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So today, let's work on the exception part. So what exception is and how Java would handle this exception. So package name, as we say, we need to give it exception pack. I would use main method. So first of all, what exception is and why do we need to handle those exceptions? So let's say we have a code for now. What the code is? So we already worked on arrays, right? So array wherein we declared this particular array. I'll take that same example. So we have this array, and then what are we trying to access? We are trying to access fourth element, right? First, second, third, fourth. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. When we say 4, it gives us this, right? So for this, if we execute it, and then the last statement or the further statements here we can write is whatever code we have written is completed. So class completed or something, another message we are saying, let's see. So when we execute this, it works fine, right? So you see it's giving us fourth element, what we have asked. And then the next statement after this is also executed. Now, what if we are trying to access an element which is not there? So here 4, right? Let's say we are trying to access 8, which is index 8, in the sense ninth element, but in the list we don't have that particular element. So what does Java do when we execute it? So it would basically throw an exception, right? Error saying index out of bound, kind of this thing. So you see the exception of for this particular thing is array index out of bound exception. So there are only 6 elements, but you're trying to access the 8th one, which is what Java doesn't understand what to give, and that's why it kind of throws an exception. And this type of exception, initially when we have written, we are not sure if it might give us or not. So only when we are doing it in the runtime, then we get this exception. So there are basically two types: checked and unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions, so whatever we did, this array index out of bound exception, right? So while execution, we would come to know. So those exceptions are basically called check exceptions. So sorry, uncheck exceptions. Let me. So here, this I would write comment. So whatever this thing initially with once we have written, and after execution, if we are getting the exception, so those things we called it as unchecked exceptions. Okay, so unchecked exceptions are those exceptions wherein after runtime only we would come to know. And what is checked exceptions? So basically checked exceptions are nothing but let's say we have a system related something which is like thread.sleep, let's say. So thread.sleep, here we give this kind of statement just to stop the execution, hold it for a while. And here if we are giving, let's say, so here if we are giving, so this is initially only we are we would get this thing. So this is nothing but checked exceptions, wherein initially only we would come to know, system Java understands that there might be an exception that might occur when we are executing. So Java asks us to prevent this particular exception either by using throws or by using try catch. So there are two other methods wherein two other ways basically with which we can handle this type of situations. So this is check type. You see, as soon as I have written this, Java is throwing this error saying unhandled exceptions, type interrupted exception. So that's why we get this particular exception called checked. And unchecked we have written, but after execution only Java would come to know if that particular element is there or not. If we add it, if we add further elements here, next elements if we add, then Java might not throw error. That's why it is not sure. So those exceptions are nothing but unchecked. Only after runtime, if we have data, it would provide. If it doesn't, then it throws an exception. So now how to handle this exceptions? So basically, we can handle. You see the other benefit or usage of handling the exception. So exception is what? And avoiding, basically exception handling is avoiding the uh, whatever sudden exception, sudden things might come in our program, right? So those things if we just have to handle, uh, so whatever statement lines of program prevents our execution, stops interrupted, like kind of if you have 100 of lines and at some 10th line or something, if the exception occurs, so the rest 90 lines won't be executed. You can see that example here, right? So we have written 4 lines, let's say, and we have got exception here at the 16th line. So then once the 16th line we have got error, what it does, did it printed this thing? It didn't, right? So that's why we need to handle, so that even if error occurs, we say okay, we are fine with it, or we try to correct it, and then even once the error occur, let's handle it and then move on with the next steps, next whatever code is. So we don't want our program to stop in middle. That's why we use this handle this exceptions. So as I said, how to handle this such things. So what I would do is, should I, here we have number 8. I would take this example only. So in this, how to handle this thing. So we know this code, this line might trigger an exception. So for that, what we have to write is we use a try keyword. So syntax, first of all, if I have to say incomplete, so we would have a try, we would have a catch block, and then we would also have finally block. So we would have all these 3, wherein try is what, whatever lines of code. It's not only just one line you need to write and then do it. So it might be 10, 100, whatever your requirement is. So what line might give us an exception, so those particular things we would be writing it in try block. So we know this might give us an exception, and what type of exception it gives, we know it gives us array index out of bound exception. So this line, when it is executed, it gives us this error. So in catch, what we do is we write that particular exception. So it's, we need to write it carefully, like, so when you say array, since we know this is related to array and it might give us that exception, so just write that exception. So just write array and control space, so you would get suggestions what type of this thing you want to write. So here from this we'll just select array index out of bounds exception. Okay, so in this array index out of bound exception, we write this, and then we need to give the object name, just like object creation we have. So some reference variable we can give. So what would give is, generally we prefer saying e is exception, right? So we give that way, or anything. It's not only e, you can give any name, whatever you feel you want to give here. And then once the exception is caught, so what are we doing exactly? Try step, whatever lines of code we have that might produce an exception, we would write it in here. And then catch block, we'll just catch that exception. And then finally, so let's say now we have this thing, only thing is we have written it here, and rest I've kept empty. I'm not doing anything. And then you see, so since you see this 36th line, it has not executed, right? After writing this exception, handling this exception, if I execute now, what happens? You see, it has printed, which means now we are not sure the error has occurred or not, right? But even if but we know, since this particular element is not there and it used to give us an error, but that error is not displayed. So if you want to display in try, once we write that step in catch block, we can print if we want to show it to the user or to ourselves. If something error has occurred here, we can print, uh, we can say you are in the catch block because some exception might have occurred. So if you see now, or after this, I would also write another statement. Try block ended. And for finally, any lines of code, not just one, you can write. So whatever your requirement is, based on that you can write it here, or any logic, anything, whatever specific thing you are doing, be it in automation or just Java. So those things you can write it here. So I would say uh, we are in finally block. So now step by step, let's go. So you would have so here what I would do is step by step I would execute. So you see in try block I've just kept this debugger point, and then we'll debug it. Right click execution, and we'll try to understand what's happening. Yeah. You see number array, it has what, those elements 0 1 0 to 5, all those are there. So this is executed for the first time, and then next pointer is what, here it is waiting in the 20th line. So now number array of 8, so which means we don't have that seventh index here, that's why this would throw an error. Now if you say next step over, so after this you see where it has went, it has went to catch block, because the next line it has not executed. Reason, this line was producing an exception, giving us an exception. So that's why this 21st line has not printed. So if it was printed here in the console, we would have got it. So it has not. From this 20th step, it has jumped to catch. So it doesn't bother, like inside this, if you write hundreds of lines or whatever, wherever in particular line an exception occurs, from that point it goes. If you have written try to catch, it goes to the catch block, and in catch block it tries to match with the exception. So whatever exception you are giving here, so here you have given array index out of bound, so whatever error it might have got here, is it giving a same exception? If it is giving, then it would come inside this. If it is not, then it would go somewhere else. So this is, we know, as it is related to array, so it would give array index out of bound. And when I say next step, so it's coming inside this, and E is having this variable array index out of bound, and then some details are there. Detail index out of one, detail message, you see here, detail message is this, stack trace is this, so something. So inside this we just we'll just execute this now. After the exception, if you say next step, so you see this has printed you are in the catch block because some exception might have occurred. What is that some exception? It is array index out of bound. So you can even print those things here inside. I'll show you what to do. So after this execution, what it is, where is it going? It's going to the finally block. And in finally, so irrespective of what error has occurred or not, it would for sure goes to the finally block. So if your situation, if your requirement is this way, where you're saying, okay, something error occurs, catch that error. And if something error even doesn't occurs, or even the error occurs, do some particular block of code. So if it is that way, then you need to use try, catch, finally. And it's not compulsory we need to use all these three. So basically try and catch is what we mostly use. Finally is very rarely used, but that depends upon the requirement or what piece of code we are writing. So now next thing, if I execute this one, this would be printed, and then we are in the finally block. Once after that, it is coming here, and then next step, it has printed even this thing, and then it stops. That's it. So this is how the program goes step by step based on the exception. So what if, okay, I'll say that thing later. So this thing, this is related to array, right? So that's why we got array, and finally you come to know, right? Now I'll just comment this for now. What is next? So array related, we know it's array index out of bound. What's next? Let's say we have a variable number. So number, let's say we are dividing a number by 0. So you know what happens when a number is divided by 0? Can someone tell me? Can we just divide the number by 0? Are you guys able to hear me? Can someone at least confirm what happens? Be it wrong or right? Let's have some interaction, so we would get some more idea. I would say I can, based on your inputs, I can again try to explain it in another way if whatever way I am explaining is not clear. Seems like no one wants to answer, so that's fine. Here, when a number is divided by 0, it goes to an infinite loop. So it's actually, in general, it's not possible to divide any number by 0. So 0 by some number is we get a result as the 0 by some number, we get result as 0. But some number by 0 is, we cannot do it. That's why we get some exception. Just like for array, we got array related error. So array out of bound exception. So this number related, what type of exception do we get it here? So if I execute, I'll show you. Let's say we want to just print number and then run. You see, again, the same thing. Arithmetic exception, some exception has occurred because this is related to math. So arithmetic exception we get here, and that is what divided by 0, which is not possible. So that's why we are getting error, and it has not printed this one since we haven't handled it. So how to handle again? So this statement, particular block of whatever you are using, so we know this number would provide would give us an exception. So what we do is here, use a try block, and whatever you want to do, write those things. And next, in catch block, we can write this arithmetic exception. So arithmetic exception, and E for now I would use it, the same thing. And then inside catch, let's say I want to, if this error occurs, I want to just print number divide by 0 is not possible. So please correct. You can say, give a message saying, please correct the statement. Please correct something like that. So those user related defined messages you can give. So number divided by 0 is not possible. So which means once we get this message or something, also we are okay, it should execute till end. And then if such messages we are getting, what we have to do is revisit, come here and make this code correctly. So instead of this, array, I've written mistakenly, or it shouldn't be happening this way. So you can change your code. So now if I execute it here, I haven't saved it. So we have number divided by 0, and then why this code is not behaving. So in Java 33rd line, we have that error saying arithmetic divided by 0. Oh, sorry, I have written this way, sir. So this line of code should be writing it in, because this line is producing an error, right? So that's why execute this in catch, and now if you see, number divided by 0 is not possible, and it has not printed this number because it doesn't know what result to print. And if you now correct it, saying okay, number shouldn't be uh, divided by this way, so it should be like divided by, let's say, 5. And now if I execute, so do we get a catch statement? If I execute, you see 2, which means 10 by 5 is 2, and 2 has been printed. And then it has not went, since this code, this block was successfully executed without any exception, that's why it didn't go to catch. And then if there was a finally block, that finally block would have been executed, and then after that it has executed and says complete. So you have changed your code, but what if the code is the same? So since then what it does is it catches the exception, arithmetic related exception, and then this way we gave this error to the user, and then it's on user now if he wants to correct or if he wants to keep it as it is. So this is arithmetic related exception. Now what's next? So let's say we have a string str equals to, we initialize a value called null. So null value, and null value we are giving it to a variable, and then that variable we are asking to print the length of that string. So this is null, and then if this line has a null and if we are trying to print it, so we know this 42 line would give us an exception. What type of exception? Basically it is null, and null related object you are trying to access, so it gives us null pointer exception. So how to handle that null pointer exception? So again, in try block, write whatever lines of code would give us an error. So this thing I would write it in try block, then in cast. So I would say null pointer exception. So that null pointer exception I would give it here. So give any message whatever you want, or you can say, since null object cannot, or since we encountered null exception, see complete details. So for that, what we can do is here just say e dot, when you say we get e message, or instead of those red color or whatever we have, we just want some more information. So we can print stack trace, get stack trace. There are other methods that are available. So we'll say for now get message, this thing, and then save, execute. So once we execute, since we encounter null exceptions, see complete details. After complete details, you see equal to, I'll keep it for understanding. So till equal to is what we customized the message. After that, what we said, get e dot get message. So what message it is saying? Cannot invoke string dot length because str is null, which means string value is null. That's why string dot length cannot be invoked, it says. So that's when you need to change the object. So give some value, like say abc, some string, and then if you now execute, it won't go to your catch statement. It says string dot length is what, 3. So it has printed 3. Try is executed, and then it has not went to the catch block, it has directly executed the next lines. So that way you need to do. So this is null pointer exception. So we have gone through this array related exception and arithmetic exception, null pointer exception. Let's say one more I would just give it. So I hope everyone is clear with the things that I'm explaining. So please let me know if someone is not able to understand, or we need some more information. Feel free to ask. So next exception, let's say, what should I say? Okay, number format exception. So we'll say we have a string, again, say str, which is some value, as I said, abc or xyz, and then so from string we want to convert it to a number. So we in Java we have few methods wherein we also can convert a string to number, a number to anything. So that's completely on our requirement. So how to convert a string to integer? So we would have this thing. What is that? Integer dot parse int is what. So integer dot parse int, it accepts string as the input, or string and then int radix. So those messages, those methods, if you just want to know what it is, so you can see those description in detail if you want to use all those things. So here it also accepts integer dot parse int, some character char sequence, and some indexes, unsigned, compare, all these things. So for now we just want integer dot parse int, and it should send, we are about to send this variable. So abc, we are trying to convert it to a what we say, a number. So int num equals to, right? So this thing we want to convert. So is it really possible to convert a string to number abc, that too? It is not, right? So again this would give an error. So this statement, what error it gives, if I execute, it gives us a number format exception, wherein it says number related. So it cannot, this format is not in desired one. That's why it gives us number format exception. How to handle this number format exception? Again, same thing. Whatever error, whichever line we might get an exception, add that in try block, and then catch exception name. So here we have exception name as number format exception, and then e, this thing. So in this, some exception occurred. Please check. Please check some exception. We know what that some exception is. Some is nothing but number format exception. So we can even say, instead of number format exception occurred. Please check. So wherever that line is, whichever line it is giving, then okay, this string cannot be converted to, this particular string cannot be converted to integer. So if we now execute, we'll get this thing, number format exception occurred. Please check. So this is, we haven't got that red colored thing. So this is what we did, we customized it, right? So that's what wherein catch block would help us. And again, so in all those things, what I would say is, so if you see here, so instead of abc, I changed it to a number, and that to string I'm taking it. So string double quotes. So this string 2, I'm asking it to change it to number, and now number, when you ask it to print, converted from string to num, num equal to what value? It is this number, right? So now if you see, so string value I've just converted with this particular line of code, and then I'm using it as a number now. So this is not, this str is a string, but num is what? Integer dot pass int, right? Int type, and then that num, wherever I need, I can use it. Same way, instead of a proper number, if you are giving some sort of text and this cannot be converted to number, that's why we get an error in this line, and then it catches here and it comes here and it is throwing whatever custom message. Or here again, instead of this message, you can say e dot get message, get localized message. You just try all those things executing by yourself, so you would get it here. So execute it. E dot get message is what? For input string, it is throwing this way. So that is e dot message. Or you can say e dot print stack trace. You can also do this. So it just prints completely the whole stack trace. So this thing, number format exception. So after the exception it has thrown, it is also executing the next line of code. So we handle, that's why it's going to the next ones. So this is done. So I hope this is clear. Can someone confirm if things, whatever I've told you about this exception is clear, or someone has any doubts they want to ask? I would take this silence as no, and seems like everything is clear. So moving on with the next things. So here again in this try catch, as I said, you can write so try inside try again. So nested try, nested catch. So here we write try catch and finally, right? Finally also again, as I said, it would just execute irrespective of if we get error or not. So again, what about exception? So you might ask how to know which exception for which particular thing, what exception if we have. So if we even not sure what exception it might throw us, then what we can do is, instead of this, we can just use the parent exception, which is just say exception. Use this exception. So now for all these things, null point, arithmetic related exception, and for array index out of bound exception. So if you don't write catch array index, instead of this, you can just use exception, and then it catches that exception. Whatever you want to print, whatever you are doing, you can do it as it is. So here, so here, since I haven't used a number format exception, if you just want to see if some error has occurred, some error or some exception, please check. And then also message is, or for more details, something like that, e dot get message. Now see here in catch, I haven't written that exception, but it is again coming to this point, right? You see some exception, please check. Message is what message? For input string, this thing. So number format. So this conversion, something is issue in this. So we don't know what type of exception it is. That's why here we just printed a message. But again, yeah, if you want more detail, you can say print stack trace. What type of exception it is, what this thing it has occurred, you can see number format exception. Because of this print stack trace, it is throwing us and that exception, a number format exception and these things. So this is what just exception. So if you don't know what exception it is, something or the other, every time if it gives us that particular exceptions, we can use this. Or again, it's not like one try you have written and then the other try. So here earlier it was number format exception, right? I'll use that number format exception, and then again you can write one more catch block. And here if you think, okay, arithmetic related exception also might occur, so we can use even that one. And then here just say arithmetic exception occurred. And if not that, then what's next? We know array index, right? Array index out of bound exception. So this way you can write. Now whatever value or whatever piece of code you give, based on that it goes to this thing. So for now we know if we execute this one, where is it going? This is number format related exception. The or I'll, okay, yeah, this one here it is giving this. Now instead of this, if I use this thing, now instead of this I would use, let's say, this number divided by 0. Okay, I cannot write num, this is num1, or I'll just comment it out. So my number is, so in try what, number divided by 0, and we know it won't go, you see, I'll put a debugger here. And now I'll execute this. So if you watch carefully, number divided by 0, when I say execute, so next is what, number format exception. So if it throws number format exception, it comes here in the 60th line. If it is not, then it goes to the next one, and again a catch statement, arithmetic related exception. So if it throws that exception, it comes here. See, when I say next, so it's coming here, which means it has not thrown number format exception, it has thrown arithmetic exception, and it has come here, and then it would print this message, and then it goes out of that catch block and then prints this thing. You see, arithmetic exception. Now same way, I've also said, other than these exceptions, if we get something else, we can use which exception? Just a parent exception, right? So just say exception and this. Check exception, some message. And now let's say if we have not written arithmetic exception, and we have these two exceptions, and we know this would throw us an arithmetic exception. So it checks, if it throws number format exception, it comes here. If it throws array bound, it comes here. If nothing is there, then since it's throwing exception, it would go to the exception block. And if we execute now, we would see check exception, which means we are in the exception now. So it has thrown some other exception. What type of exception if you want to see? Again, print stack trace, you can do it here. You can get to know what type of exception it has thrown. So if you see here, it has thrown arithmetic exception. Number divided by 0 is not possible. So that way also you can do. So this is about exceptions. And multiple, so try inside try also we can write here, again try, and then we can again write try catch blocks here. So nested try catch is also possible. If you have a requirement to wherein you find this way you need to write, you can write it that way. So this is, yeah, this is pretty much it about the exceptions, I would say. And yeah, I'm actually waiting for doubts, or someone want, if they can confirm if everything is clear or not. I'm not sure if you guys are listening or not, or if it's clear. At least can you guys acknowledge saying okay, it's clear, and then I can move on with the next ones. Thanks, Anil, at least for confirmation. Yeah, thank you. So now let's move on with the other thing. So inside this exception only I would create. So I would tell about the constructor. Constructor example. So take this again, main method. So what constructor is? So when we have created an object, so you know how we create object. If you see our previous classes, yeah, object creation. So this is what class name, any object reference equals to new keyword we use, and then again the same class name, right? So class name with this function. So this part is nothing but a constructor. And what constructor it is? This is a default constructor wherein whatever the class it has, by default it would have some default constructor, and that default constructor we are invoking. And then object creation is this way, right? The same way for our constructor example. Yeah, for our constructor example, so when we write some part of the code in constructor example class, and if I execute, so it executes right directly this main method. That's it. Now let's say we want to create an object. So how to create an object? We can create object with the class name, some reference, some name equals to new keyword, and then constructor. Constructor is what? Class of name of the class, and then it's what a constructor is. So same whatever class name it has, you need to give same name and then function. So it's kind of just a method, we can say, kind of method, but not exactly a method, wherein this part is nothing but a constructor. So by default every classes would have constructor. And what constructor it would have? So you are not able to see any code over here, but internally how it would look like is this way, empty thing. So you see this is constructor, it doesn't have return type. So but methods, I've said, right, it would have some return type, void, int, string, whatever it is, but constructors wouldn't have return type. And now this constructor, uh, basically this line of code, it goes and it triggers this particular piece of code, and inside this if you have written something, it executes. Since it is nothing, so it does nothing basically, and then it goes with the next step. Now let's say I have few variables here. So I would say int global number, some variable name, it's not that way. So I've just created this one for now, and then string also, global name, something. So I have two variables, and now if I want to just print those two variables, so I can access this variables here, right? In constructor example, next line I would just print. If I want to access directly, use this thing, but this is what? Non-static, and this is static. So directly you are not able to access it, right? So this number, what it says, around with try catch, cannot make a static reference to this thing. So that's why. So either you can change it as static if you want to access, but I don't want to make it as static. Let's say if it is non-static only. So we need to create an object, and then with object name we can access, right? So we say object we have already created for this class, which is ref dot, what you want to access? You want to access global number. So if you just control mouse over, click, it points here. And now when it prints, what it does, you see. The same way, I just want a global name. So what we do, ref dot global name. So this two, when I have execute, if you see what values we get, 0 and null. 0 for integer, for global related this thing. Internally, if nothing, no value is given, Java assigns integers as 0, strings as null. So here if you say you give 40 like this, and now if you execute, you see, so global, we have assigned some value, it has printed that value. String we didn't assign, and string it would have null, right? So let's say I just don't want to give, let's take default values only. If you want to initialize, later you do it. So here we have got this. So what constructor can do in this case is, so in constructor itself, what we can do is we can initialize these values. Let's say global number, I want to give it as 30, and the name I want to give it as Pradeep. So we have this thing here, and now when we execute, you see what the value would be. You see 30 and Pradeep. So earlier, if we didn't give anything in this code, and if we were executing it, it was giving us default values. But then when we have written something in the constructor, so what it does is, with this object reference, with this particular line of code, it goes here. If I show you in debugger, this would be more clear. So debugger, this thing. So here, if you see, go to the next one, and you see inside, or terminate this. No method return value. I just want to go inside this. So if you see this constructor, when it is executed, global name is null, global number is 0, right? And now it is about to execute the constructor. So in constructor, now if you carefully see, global number from 0, it would be changed to 30 because we have given that. The same way, global name from null, it would be assigned with this name. If I say for the next ones, let's not confuse it. So here, if you see, this line is about to execute. From 0, it would change it to 30, and from null, it would change it to Pradeep. And constructor is executed. Now it goes to the next line, and in next line we have asked to print this particular line, so it prints this, and then values of reference number, and reference number, what reference dot number is what, 30. So when you execute this, it would print 30, you see. And then now name is what, Pradeep, so it would execute this Pradeep, and done. That's it. So this is what constructor. So you can initialize, do something whatever you want, or you can say I am in this particular class, some messages if you want to give, anything you can write, same like normal method you write code, right? Or addition of two numbers, anything whatever you want to do, you can do it in this particular block. And when an object is created, then only it gets triggered. And this way, if you have some global variables and that values we want to, so this is class variable, class instance variables, we can also say. So all these things we can initialize if we want, and we can do. So this is a default constructor, and with the help of constructor we can do this way. And what if now whenever we are creating, so again if I create another, I can create another object, right? So reference one, another object, and again if I want to print, so this is second, instead of ref, we are referring to ref1. So this object, and then every time if we execute, it would give us 30 Pradeep, 30 Pradeep, because this constructor would go and initialize the same values. But what if, let's say, we want to have a different values? So what to do in that case? In that case, instead of a default one, we can use parameterized constructor. So what is parameterized constructor? Again, it would be same class name only. Class name is this. I'll just copy paste, and then this way, just like parameterized method we would have, same way parameterized uh, constructors we would have. So here we want like what parameters? One is number, so one int some number, and another is, we know one parameter is again a name. So I would say I would create two things, and then here I want global number value to be equal to, so whatever number value I would give, that value should go and sit in global number. So is it this statement clear? Please try to understand this statement. If it is not clear, I will again try to make it clear with some other example, or try to find another way wherein you can understand, if someone who doesn't understand this. So whatever number we might give from somewhere else, that number we want to sit in global variable. So that's why we give it this way. Now same way, this name should go and sit in where? To our this particular string. And now whenever you create an object, so instead of calling a default one, you call better the parameterized constructor. So new object, when you just do control space constructor example, and we have these two suggestions, right? You can either call this one or you can either call this one, but we want to call parameterize now, because we don't want default every time 30 and Pradeep. Based on object, when I create, I might give different values. So those different values I want to call it. So how to do that? So use this, and then number. So what value? I this time I want to call give number as 50, and name as this another parameter as some name, name one. Close it. So now when this particular global variable and global name is being printed, you see what values it prints? Whatever we have given, 50 and name one. So for this object, we have given these values, and that values is what we have printed. So this is about default constructor, about parameterized constructor as well. So I hope this is clear. So today we have gone through about this exception and about the constructor. So constructor, you just explore more, and yeah, you guys, if you have any doubts whenever you practice and you have some piece of code you want to share with me, so what you can do is share your code to my email address if you want. So here I would, if you can note it down, you want to note. So my email address is this, pradeeptawalji@gmail.com. So some piece of code if you want to share with me and then ask any doubts in that thing, feel free to share your code in my Gmail, and then I would have a look and we can discuss more. So any doubts if you have, you can just email me on this Gmail, whatever code you have written, and any doubts if you have, you can write it here. So this thing, and next coming to the Selenium part. So I would another take 2 to 3 classes for this Java thing, and then after most probably Tuesday or Wednesday, I might start the actual automation, the Selenium part. So till then, yeah, we have another oops concept that we want to discuss. So a couple of days oops concept and collection. So only few things, I won't go into deep, only basic things that we might use, which helps us to understand the automation part. I would explain it there. And yeah, also other thing that I wanted to tell you guys is, so this Saturday, probably after 9 a.m. or something, I'm planning to take an offline class in the institute. So if someone who is available and want to come, so we can meet in institute and discuss. So on that day, what I'm trying to do is I would give couple of programs that I want to explain. So some basic programs like how to reverse a number, how to reverse a string, some programs, whatever you guys might say. So I can explain you. So 4 to 5 programs that I might have. So this Saturday, probably what is like, yeah, on 8th. So institute offline, we can discuss if someone wants to have this thing. So yeah, you guys can let me know, and then based on that particular thing, we might be taking that offline class as well. So on Saturday, I'm planning to explain that program, all those programs, a couple of programs, whatever. So with that logic, you can equal, like compare and do it by yourself. So similar programs, whatever you might get. So this, sometimes they might ask this programs in the interview. So those are the basic ones that they might be expecting. So yeah, then this is pretty much it. So if anyone doesn't have any doubts, then we are good to close. Thanks everyone.